Now you're welcome along. Football show. Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent has entered the studio. Good evening.
Evening, Joe.
Manchester City have gone from 3-0 up to 4-0 up all of a sudden, 5-1 on aggregate against Leipzig. They're currently celebrating. Gundogan with Manchester City's fourth, Erling Haaland with a hat-trick, and I think we can safely say they're through to the knockout stages, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say a 4-0 up. I did fancy them to go through the season comfortably, but not maybe that comfortably, if you know what I mean. I sort of was one of those where I felt there would be no real stress for them, but it's actually turning into a bit of a thrashing from Leipzig's perspective. Very good goal from Gundogan. I think we're doing that usual post-goal thing of checking if there's anything for VAR to have a look at, but it's all pretty clear cut. Very high quality strike.
Clear cut, yeah, really good goal. So the first half, City on top. Haaland, first goal was a penalty. It was a real the game is gone kind of a moment penalty, where ball was headed towards defender's arm. Eyewitness said the arm was dramatically away from body. It was enough away from body to call VAR in. Referee went over to the sideline and gave the penalty, gave a yellow card. I don't think it should be a penalty, but it's a penalty. Haaland scores that. And then within 30 seconds to a minute, De Bruyne hits what I would liken to Roberto Di Matteo's volley in an FA Cup final a long time ago, Dan, against Middlesbrough.
Oh, yeah.
In the early stages, De Bruyne rifles volley underside of the crossbar, doesn't go in on this occasion, comes out to Haaland, who jumps and does really well, actually, gets right up to head the ball into an empty net. And then the third goal is a corner. Man City have been dangerous from corners all evening, and ball is headed across the goal line and defender clears it, but Haaland anticipates the clearance and blocks it into the net. So that was 3-0 at half-time, game over, and now Gundogan has just added some cherry to the icing to the cake, etc. In the other game, by the way, Inter Milan went into their away tie against Porto 1-0 up, and it is 0-0 on the night, so Inter still 1-0 up in this round of 16, a tie on aggregate. So that's about where we are in the Champions League this evening. I always thought you'd take Cheltenham week off.
Oh, I pretty much do, yeah. Just come in to see you for an hour here.
Oh, so you're off paper duty.
Oh, yeah.
Clear the decks.
Well, I mean, it's actually, to be honest, I mean, it's not the worst week in the world to be off, because you're heading into International Week is upon us. International Fortnight is upon us. I mean, this time next week it'll be 24 hours out from Ireland, Latvia, but the first game of the international year is upon us. So it gets very busy. So it's always a week. Apparently there's some other sporting events on this week, some pretty big sporting events on this week, not just Cheltenham. So it's a good time to just enjoy it. Yeah.
Latvia on the Thursday, France on a Monday.
No, Wednesday is Latvia. So and then France on the Monday the 27th. Yeah. So France playing Holland on the 24th as well. It's probably another date to note on the Friday night. So actually, it's unusual. You're going to have a really big game in Ireland's group that you'll be able to see that it won't clash with an Ireland game at the same night, which is often the case. So get a chance to have a good look at them.
Mick just told me both live and off the ball, so I've just discovered I'll be at both games.
Oh, there you go. I'll see you there.
What a luxurious position to find yourself in.
Yeah.
How blessed. I mean, I was, to be fair, I did know I looked a long time ago to see what night the France match was on and figured Monday.
I'd like to think you wouldn't be so blasé about the gig that you would not know you were going to.
Latvia, I was less sure, I'll be honest. But France, just the thought of being there to see Mbappe, and obviously the game itself was high on the agenda. So what's the word on the squad come Thursday?
Well, I mean, I'm just looking at, there's always that danger of last minute injuries. I don't think there's anything that's come over the horizon. There was a few players missing at the weekend. Queeveen Kelleher, Shane Duffy hasn't been playing anyway. Kelleher hasn't been playing anyway. But
Haaland just scored his fourth, sorry.
Oh, there we go.
Man City's fifth. He had a few bites at it. There was a brilliant header. I mean, if you're watching the highlights at any stage, just note the sheer athleticism of this header on Haaland's part. It's outrageous. I mean, it really is. The header was saved, came back to him and just whacked it in with his left foot. And as is customary, they cut to Dad in the crowd, who is jumping around with mates. His dad's having a grand time at the moment, isn't he?
It's a great...
It's just generally life is spent in a corporate box celebrating his son's...
Yeah, and particularly as, to be fair, anyone who plays Premier League football and internationally at a good level as Alfinga did, can be reasonably very proud of their own career. And yet he's getting to live through an entire second career now. just on another level. It's a bit of a sort of a Max Verstappen vibe in some ways. You know, it's like you got to a certain level, but like then the next one is a freak. You know, and I mean, I wonder what the cumulative distance of his goals tonight, Haaland, will be. You know, sort of close range.
12 yards.
12 yards. Yeah, I have an idea of the first one.
Yeah,
and then the others.
he might just about break 30.
Would you get 12 more between the rest of them? You know, potentially. But yeah.
You were saying?
I can't remember what I was saying. Yeah, the squad, I think like Mikey Johnston would probably be in the squad, who's the new recruit.
How good is Mikey Johnston?
Don't really know, is the honest answer.
So I had a look at his highlights reel when he was Irish qualified.
Yeah.
And there's a lot there to like, but obviously highlights aren't the full package, to say the least.
Yeah, so like, I mean, I suppose, you know, there'd be Celtic fans sort of listening, watching, who would have watched a lot of Mikey Johnston, who would have broken the scene as a very exciting young player.
It's technically very good.
Yeah, a very good dribbler. I mean, that's the thing for Stephen Kenny. He's always spoken about wanting a player who's a real, who can dribble and take people on. I always thought when he was maybe speaking about his disappointment that Aaron Connolly hadn't pushed on. Like, he had a very pointed comment about how Aaron Connolly, and this was actually striking, that with the 21s, Aaron Connolly was a real dribbler, made things happen by going past people, and that Kenny said maybe Aaron Connolly had lost that skill a little bit. He'd evolved in such a way that maybe that had come out of his game. So he's always wanted that type of player in the squad. You know, someone, in fact, like across Stephen Kenny's career, he's always had a thing about wingers. You know, he's always, like, he had Paddy McCourt at Derry back in the day. You know, Daryl Horgan when he was at Dundalk, who at that level like was exceptionally good. And he's always had teams with those type of people who can make something happen. And I think he sees probably Mikey Johnston as a player who can make things happen. What's up in the air is his ability to make it happen, I suppose, at international level. Now, at Celtic, he was doing very well until his first long-term injury, and then I do think that as a club sometimes where like you're in the spotlight very early, and then if you begin to disappoint a bit, you can become old news very quickly. So he went out to Portugal, a fresh start, alone, and started the season very well. And all the reports were positive. The concern would be that he hasn't been playing very much in recent weeks. That would be the worry, that it did appear his trajectory was sort of moving upwards towards Christmas, and maybe since then he's hit a little bit of a loss of form. I don't know why that is, but Kenny certainly seems to think that there's always going to be a room that he'll make room in the squad for someone like that, and he's, I suppose, gone on record to say he thinks he'll have a big part to play in the campaign, but sort of caveated that by saying maybe not necessarily this month, but that Latvia game, I would see no reason if he's in the squad not to chuck him in there.
There was talk that Shane Duffy would do well to make the squad as Manchester City and Erling Haaland score another goal.
Every time I turn around, he seems to be celebrating a goal.
Every time his dad sits back down in his chair, he's scored again. He's up again with his mates. So it's City 6-0, 7-1 in the night. Again, they've cut to dad in the crowd.
They just need to save some of their goals here, don't they?
Not at all.
Save them for when they need them.
Erling Haaland
was meant to be the difference in the Champions League. But he's not the five. I mean, he has scored 5 goals.
Gazillion goals. You know, he's feeding on this.
But they want one when it's a tight semi-final.
He'll score one in a tight semi-final too. This is he's a true goal extrovert, Dan. He gets energy from this. This is not diminishing.
I mean, again,
battery.
He's just having like a really nice day for just everything falling in his direction.
Yeah. Every time he turns around, the ball falls to him in the box.
Yeah, and like, I mean, I would say that generally with a striker, that's brilliant movement. They're in the right place, but some of these he has just been a little bit fortunate.
Whenever it's Erling Haaland, I just assume there's innate movement happening.
Like the third goal, the hat-trick goal, that was like instinct following up to block. In fact, the first two, but I think that one is probably the luckiest one in the sense of keeper with an unusual
he's at
punch in his direction.
8 attempts, 8 on target, 5 goals. If Guardiola takes him off now, I won't be happy. We want 10.
Do we?
Yeah, just for sheer hilarity of Erling Haaland scoring 10 goals in a game.
Just to get you through to Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
we'll always remember it. We're not going to remember the night he scored 5.
Yeah, it's not really an iconic fixture, Man City and Leipzig.
I was just asking, Shane Duffy was in danger of missing out.
Yeah, I think he's in trouble. I think the issue you would have as well is that like it's a position where Ireland are pretty well stocked.
Yeah.
With Darragh O'Shea, with John Egan, with Nathan Collins, albeit Collins has only come off the bench recently.
And who's on if one of those is injured?
Kenny's a big fan of Andrew Omoma-Badele, who is now back. Also, Seamus Coleman is probably an option in the right of the back three. He has been playing regularly. I suppose it is one game here we're talking about. You're talking about France, and I guess you're thinking, okay, how are you going to approach the France game? And of course, you're right, there's an injury, but you would assume that, like, for that game, he's probably going to be happy enough with either John Egan or Nathan Collins in the centre. Is he going to put in any scenario, a Shane Duffy who hasn't played, who isn't sharp, to play against a team where you would think obviously the main threat you're worried about Mbappe, but a particular team that plays with real pace and power. If it's a game where you think you're going to be defending the box a lot, I can understand why. But for the very nature of this test, I would assume like match sharp players to play in the back three would be high up the list of priorities. So I'd say Duffy being a tricky, but you might still have him in the squad, the extended squad, but I can't see any scenario where he plays.
And to ask what will be the most asked question of the week, will Evan Ferguson start?
I just think with every week, the case for him starting gets stronger and stronger. Like I probably spoke 6 weeks ago, whenever Evan Ferguson really exploded at Premier League level, and my probably instinct at that point was that I just can't see him starting against France. I think Kenny probably has tried things out with various options in his forward line, and would he want to? It's probably just a wrong way of thinking. Would he want sort of a real counter attacking number 9 in that game? But actually, you just watch Ferguson every week, and the quality of his all-round play is so good. He's played against Konate twice. He holds the ball up well and actually brings others into the game, which helps relieve pressure against for a team that might be under the cosh. So I think it is. I think there's a little bit of a dilemma then, because you have to figure out what partnerships do I need to form? And he was in the squad in November at least, so it's not his first time meeting the players. He did come on for a couple of games, but it feels like he's just even a different animal since then. Like you're looking tonight, like Troy Parrott, who I think has done very well for Kenny, but he's on the bench for Preston, away to Rotherham.
Has he generally been on the bench?
No, he's been involved, but there's actually Tom Cannon, who's been involved in Irish underage squads on loan from Everton. He scored again tonight. He scored in the last couple of games. He actually seems to be ahead of Parrott in the moment, even though, speaking to people like Cannon, I think he's more of a poacher type of striker. But anyway, that's by the by. When you've maybe Troy Parrott in that situation, you've Adam Ida, who's back, but again, in and out of the side at Norwich. I'd be a big fan of Ida actually. Obafemi, okay, he's coming off the bench for Burnley and they're going to go up, and he's a talent. And Ogbene's been very solid and very good for Rotherham. But Evan Ferguson's doing it every week in the Premier League. I think sometimes there's a tendency for fans or people just to sort of go, he's playing in the Premier League, he has to play, and it sort of doesn't have respect for the process of trying to build a team and a squad and an understanding. But this is a sustained, this isn't just someone who's played 2 appearances, and 3 appearances, and sometimes you have these calls for players off the back of that, which wouldn't always be rational. I think in this instance, he's playing at such a level, he's played more Premier League football in the last month than most of those other options mentioned have in their entire career. Adam Ida had a good spell last year. Obafemi's had spells, but probably never been a prolonged starter for a run of games at that level.
He hasn't. Looking at Obafemi at Swansea, there are 26 appearances across the season, but we're talking 2 goals since the 1st of November. Now, admittedly, there were 2 in February, so that's good. But again, compared to Ferguson's body of work right now. Yeah, well,
the thing about Obafemi was he had that saga over leaving Swansea. He eventually left in January to join Burnley, but he was in the bad books with Swansea, so he actually wasn't involved for large portions of the season. And now he's gone to Burnley, who are flying, who are strolling to promotion, and they're just sort of using him off the bench with an established squad. So I wouldn't be looking at just stats for Obafemi this year. That wouldn't really tell the story of his year at all. It's just more the case that what Ferguson is doing, and even just the way that he plays, the maturity that he plays. The one concern you would have is that Brighton are brilliant, right? But as they're Brighton are brilliant, they have such a brilliant game plan, and they're he's clearly working with them every week. every day. He has come into Premier League football with an understanding of his role with players around them, and now he's going to come into an international setup where just things operate in a slightly different way in terms of how much time they have together, the time you have.
And you're selling me all the negatives here.
Well, I'm not. I'm just like, I mean,
put him in.
Oh yeah, well, like you just throw him in and expect him to like elevate them like an NBA star, just sort of like build it. Like, I mean, just trying to explain why that may not happen. Like, I think there's a real danger of like people going, oh God, if he's taken off after 65 minutes after being ineffective, oh Jesus, you know. It's like, well, there's logical reasons why that could easily happen.
Agreed, I hear all that. I would presume somebody's hands-on as Stephen Kenny is potentially already in communication with Ferguson. He's been talked to about the game plan. There's a fair amount of preparation that they'll have, not least the Latvia game. So I think like this guy's able to take on information and play within a system. I mean, I think he can definitely take on board the Kenny plan.
No, I completely. I'm not doubting.
Why are you talking down him? Have we clipped this?
No, you see, I'm not talking down Evan Ferguson at all. I'm just saying
the realities of football.
The realities of like expecting him to slot in like he's incredibly good, and I've no doubt he's going to be around for a long time. And I think, you know, the Ireland's chances of getting to tournaments in the next 15 years have improved because Evan Ferguson has come along. There's no doubt about that. It's just like it's been measured enough about what he can deliver in the short term, and that's like Kenny has played this 3-4-2-1 at times, or like a 3-4-3 at times, and again with Ferguson, you know, who do you play off him? I think there's like, and I think, you know, there's no doubt that Kenny, and this is the thing about Kenny and the staff, the one thing, no matter what people will end up saying about Stephen Kenny whenever he does leave, I think even, you know, I think even sort of people maybe around the FAI who may not be mad about him, they'll never deny the work that the staff will put in terms of like their prep and the meetings they will have. But this is something that I think has come a little bit ahead of schedule for them, Ferguson breaking through, and it's just led them to evaluate like, okay, can you play Parrott and Ferguson together? Do you need, and against France, like what you're going to need off the ball in certain situations, and like it's a real, like they're going to have to put a lot of work into that. And the Latvia game was great for confidence and understanding, but clearly like playing against Latvia versus playing against France is just like a completely different sport almost. So it's what they try and get from that first game that can be useful in some way for the second game. And if you play, like if you want to play Ferguson and Obafemi, I just don't think you do that against France. Maybe that's what you want to do longer term, but then that influences like the shape and the structure behind you and how the team operates.
You wanted to mention the new shape of World Cups going forward.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a few other things going on. Like I probably should mention Ireland under 17 at some stage as well, qualifying, which is linked to that. But I mean, we do have the confirmation today. Well, the FIFA Congress is in Rwanda this week. Gianni Infantino will be standing unopposed, so he's his Constitution Hill style favourite to get over the line. In fact, I think maybe even a more resounding favourite. You know, the odds in the double wouldn't have been very favourable.
Who's the honeysuckle of the football world?
The honeysuckle of the football world
to get this going. I
mean, I feel like this is only going to bring us down a bad road. If I go down that way, I'm not even sure. The persistent, yeah. No, I'm going to stop with that one. I don't even know who that is. But what I do know is that Infantino will be re-elected, and he is well down the road towards potentially being in charge till 2031. And what we're seeing is,
just don't want to be talking about Gianni Infantino.
Well, you will be. You will be. Yeah, he quite skillfully pointed out that even though he took over and had quite a long term when he initially took over the role from Blatter, that doesn't count as one full term, so he's entitled to like the full quota of like whatever 3 full terms what it is.
He's entitled, all right.
Yeah, of course he is. So anyway, it has been confirmed that, and I think on balance, right, the 48 team World Cup was in place. They had this plan for 16 groups of 3, which in my view would have been a disaster. Now the 48 team World Cup is in place. I mean, we've had the 32 team World Cup there, which aside from where it was, is the perfect competition in terms of the format, the shape of it. You just couldn't, I mean, why would you fix it? Like when it's not broken, but you're FIFA. So of course you did. You know, so that's already done. But in a way, it's like, well, that's game over, ball burst now. That's gone. Within the 48 team World Cup, the idea of a 3-team group was just leading you open to all sorts of like, shambolic situations. So they have now confirmed probably the best case scenario of it is to do 12 groups of 4, but it's going to make the competition a week and a half longer or a week longer, basically. So you have more games, a lot more of a slog, a sort of a 5.5 week tournament now, which, I mean, if it's great football, like, that's fantastic. And I still think it's better than the alternative, I have to say, within the 48 team. Like, it is one thing to say, well, the best is what was there already, but that's gone. That ship has sailed, because it's in line with a lot of FIFA policies and football tournaments generally make them bigger because it's politically better when you are elected by virtue of a sort of a first past the post system when everyone has an equal vote of whatever 211 nations. So you get like 48 of them in result.
So in all these group stages, we'll still have top 2 qualify, and then 8 of the next best, so third place in 8 groups, will go through. In effect, we'll have 32 teams through to the knockout stages.
It appears to be the case, yeah.
So 16 teams will go home.
I think they have to finalise some of the still absolute nil of the regulations, but that does seem to be the thing, yeah. The Euro, the 24 team Euros is not dissimilar. Third place is generally fine.
The final batch of matches in the group stages at the World Cup just gone were incredibly good those nights.
Yeah.
They were sensational. And now will it just be a bit of a dud? Well,
I suppose there were combinations in those nights where teams like that Spain, Germany group, Costa Rica, at one point it wasn't Germany bottom, but it's obviously harder now. I suppose the argument is a bit more like seeding. It's if you become a third place team, are you more likely to have a heavyweight game? But obviously we in the round of 32. But what we do know is by more teams in the competition, there's obviously a strong chance that you're going to have less depth in groups that the bigger teams. Now, I do think, to be fair, what we did see at the World Cup is that you sometimes are very dismissive of the teams in Asia and other confederations. So I think we'll get used to it, and I still think it's better than the alternative, but obviously the perfect World Cup has been broken. Also, this Club World Cup is coming out every 4 years, and this is part of their big thing as well. And Irish fans will be sort of quite interested in this, that we're so used to the rhythm of the international year where it's games in September, games in October, games in November. From 2026 they're turning that September, October 2 windows into one, so you're going to have this 16-day window with 4 games.
I think that's really good
every year. I think it's really good if you're a bigger nation. I think for a smaller one, if your entire year ends up revolving around 2 weeks and Evan Ferguson gets a 3-week knock, that's not great.
Bringing too much negativity to me here. It's a festival of international.
Well, no,
football.
I think you're probably just thinking, less international breaks. That's basically what you're probably thinking.
No, I was thinking that there'd be a mini tournament feel to it. We could all really park the Premier League or park club football and say, right, we've got these 4 matches across these 2 weeks. Everybody really gets stuck into it.
Well, yeah, but the rest of the campaign is going to be at a rhythm of 2-game windows.
I can live with that too.
Yeah.
I'm just declaring a slight preference for a month of Irish talk, Dan, with you and me.
It's just, I can see, yes, I'm not going to suggest you're going to book your holidays for that time sometimes.
What?
Just take a...
Sorry, no, I'm all in on that. I mean...
We'll still be having a Stephen Kenny debate in 2026, probably.
Yeah,
that stage.
I mean, we probably will.
Yeah.
No, I genuinely, I think there's a degree of, right, let's really have a...
I will say that the Nations League won last year with the 4-game window.
Yeah.
By the end of it, you felt like Ireland were hitting their stride.
See, you don't like it because you'll just get so much... You just hate the culture war that the Irish team is... So you're just thinking, oh my God, a month of social media in my life. But park all that. I think it will be like a mini World Cup for you.
Well, the only thing, as I would say, is that it is linked with the moves to try and make this Club World Cup a thing. They need to make room in the calendar for the Club World Cup to say we're going to try and rush through our own version of a club tournament here to rival UEFA's one. So something has to give. So it's not that it's necessarily been brought in for the right reasons, I would say anyway.
Fair enough.
And this Club World Cup, 32 team, no more than 2 from one country, unless I think one has won the Champions League. There's a couple of provisions for that. Where that goes, where that sits into the calendar, it does feel like a lot of these discussions, like the long World Cup, there's going to be if someone like Kylian Mbappe, what how many games are you going to end up playing in his career? You know, at that point, like 25, 26, 25, 26, like already there is this number of games you have to play in a year. This Qatar year is exceptional. But imagine like some of the top end players who are going to a Club World Cup and expect to be involved in the business end of major tournaments. I do think at some stage there is going to be a kickback from player unions about this.
Yeah.
You know, about sort of some sort of player welfare issues. I know some people think, oh, like pampered, but I mean, it is true. Like careers burn out sometimes through some of this stuff, and we love football, but you can have too much, and the Premier League isn't going to cede any ground on its scheduling because naturally that's such a monster. You know, the Champions League is moving to this elaborate Swiss format, which is more games. So, like, what gives at some stage?
Yeah, players' bodies, I suppose. But yeah, that is the point. And we'll take it as read. None of these things are being done for the right reasons. That's
oh no,
it's
FIFA. Yeah.
Henry Winter just tweeted incredible numbers from Erling Haaland. He now has 39 goals for Manchester City for the season. He beats Tommy Johnson's club record, which was set in 1929. And there are a possible 19 games remaining. So Haaland is on 39 goals with a possible 19 games remaining. That's in all competitions. He's just left the field to a standing ovation.
For a minute there, I was thinking of Tommy Johnson, who played in the Premier League in the late 90s. I don't think he played for City.
Word is Alfie Haaland and his mates have just left the stadium carrying Alfie out on their shoulders, chanting, drinking beers, loving life. That's the
Tuesday night, like, you know.
Football shows brought to you with Sky. Watch Real Madrid, Liverpool in the Champions League tomorrow night live on BT Sport. We're going to check in over in Madrid actually in just a moment, and Dan mentioned the Irish under-17s, so we'll be back with you in 1 second. Manchester City 6-0 up on the night, 7-1 on aggregate. Erling Haaland in devastating form, still 0-0 between Porto and Inter 1-0 up on the night. Dan, what chance do you give Liverpool tomorrow?
I just can't see it happening. I know, like, I think you were just maybe discussing it earlier. There is a sense of, well, the Champions League always delivers. You feel like it does, but actually, I mean, this round of 16, it's been a limited element of it. Like even that Spurs Milan game last week, flat. Even PSG's exit, like you thought there might be a bit more going on. It's like, nah, maybe there's. I mean, come on, it's not going to happen, is this? You tell me.
It's hard to disagree. Semra Hunter is with us, La Liga TV presenter. Semra, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
So Carlo Ancelotti was speaking this afternoon ahead of the game, and he meant it very sincerely. He was saying it's a strange fixture for Real Madrid to approach. We're all looking at this from Liverpool's point of view, and for them it's fairly obvious they're going to have a real go at this. It's kind of tricky when you got a 3-goal lead. I mean, do we sit? Do we go? What do we do? So in a perverse way, it's tricky-ish in terms of preparation for Madrid.
It is, and that's the conundrum. I think you hit the nail on the head. He even used the word in Spanish, trampa, which means trap. And he said, we need to be really mentally and psychologically prepared for this game, because historically Madrid don't actually do very well whenever they have such a big lead. And when they can take their foot off the gas, it tends to actually work against them a little bit. And I think Chelsea comes to mind from last season when they took a 3-1 lead back from Stamford Bridge. And then all of a sudden they found themselves 3-0 down at the Santiago Bernabeu, and Rodrigo had to come off the bench and save the day really late on in the game. So I think they will have learned lessons from the past. But you're absolutely right. It's going to be about concentration, about focus, and about how do we attack this game. Ancelotti knows that Liverpool are going to come out swinging because they have to. They have to go guns blazing. They have no other choice to do so. There's a 3-goal difference. So they have to at least equalise things by scoring 3 or win by scoring 4, unless it were to go into extra time and penalties. So they're going to come out on the ultra attack, I would imagine, Liverpool, which means they're going to have to take risks. And so Liverpool may be exposed. They may have some spaces which Real Madrid can then attack. They can use to their benefit. But Ancelotti said he expects a really open game. And I think that they would really like to go on the offensive as well, which, to be honest, kind of seems like a little bit of a surprise. I would have thought that they would maybe want to try and contain Liverpool a little bit more and figure out how to deal with the high press that Liverpool will definitely be throwing at them. But you're right. It is, I think, ultimately about finding this balance between knowing when to attack and when to defend. But they know that they do have a very good advantage. There's no question about that. But Liverpool, on their day, they can score 7, right? Like they did against Manchester United. So you never know.
There was something so impressive about Madrid at Anfield in that they are up against a side who are still very good when they want to be and can be very good in patches, and they go 2 goals down, and there was no hint of nervousness or anxiety or wavering on their part. And, you know, you could see all the experience to the fore. And then in the second half, they were just a joy to watch. Yeah. So I'm not watching La Liga week in, week out, but I thought it was just an awesome performance for various reasons. And I do wonder why they're 9 points behind Barcelona in the table. Was that performance at Anfield a cut above what they've been producing across the league, Semra? Or what would you say of Madrid's general form?
I would say it has to do more with the type of rival that they come up against. In Liverpool, you have a highly offensive side, like I say, that plays with a high line, that gives spaces for players like Vinicius Jr. to run into, or Karim Benzema, who can be absolutely devastating against Liverpool. In La Liga, smaller teams, mid-table teams, they tend to go much more on the defensive. So they'll sit deep, they'll park the bus, they'll put 5 at the back. They won't leave many spaces for Real Madrid. And so it's very difficult for them to then crack the code and to find ways to actually breach defenses and to score a lot of goals. And so I think they struggle a lot more against those types of setups when they put 9 or 10 men behind the ball. And so they almost have no other choice but to take shots from distance, because if they try to get to the area inside the box, they'll often run into a lot of traffic and they won't necessarily have a lot of creativity to sort things out, because they don't really use a lot of patterns of play. They do kind of just rely on individual brilliance at times to sort them out, because that's just Real Madrid. They're that good, right? So I would say they actually enjoy playing against teams like Liverpool to a degree, in the sense that it does allow for a much more open game, for a more end-to-end game. And it does allow for Real Madrid to utilize their strengths in a much more powerful way, such as the speed and the velocity of Vinicius Jr. down the left, which is predominantly what they always do. I mean, they love to find him. That is pretty much the number one way in which Real Madrid like to attack. Yes. So I would say in some ways it's down more to that than anything else, just who they have in front of them.
Well, speaking of individual brilliance, Karim Benzema is back, which just makes things trickier again for Liverpool. As we sign off, there is an extraordinary story developing in Spanish football. So Spanish football enduring its worst ever moment, according to the La Liga president, Javier Tebas, speaking last night. And so I've been aware of this in the background without paying too much heed to it. But in short, last week, Spanish prosecutors charged Barcelona with corruption after payments of more than €7 million to a company owned by a former referee-in-chief were uncovered earlier this year. So they have been charged, and this seems like an extraordinary story. Is there any good reason why Barcelona might have given €7 million to a company owned by a former referee-in-chief?
Well, what they say, their defense, is that it was for technical reports on referees, which they claim that everybody in the elite level does. However, they claim that they're innocent, that they've done absolutely nothing wrong. Laporta's come out saying that they have all these documentation to prove their innocence. They have voice notes, they have invoices, they have all these kinds of things, and they're willing to participate in the investigation that's going to be carried out against them. But again, it's a very tricky matter indeed. It was going on for a very long time, and it
1994 to 2018.
Yeah, exactly. It will be a very difficult job, I think, for the prosecutors to prove that Barcelona did it with intent. And in fact, that's all they need. They need to prove that there was intent from Barcelona's end to influence referees, to get them to sway results in their favor, which is what they're arguing. And that is one of the ways in which they can find Barcelona guilty. They don't necessarily have to find evidence of it actually having happened.
Right.
Now, even more news came out today, apparently from El Mundo, which is another newspaper here in Spain, which is continuing with this investigation. They're alleging that there are more clubs in the top flight and in the second division that have done the same thing. So they didn't name names yet. It sounds as though it's the tip of the iceberg, but it's definitely, as you rightly say, probably the worst crisis, at least PR crisis anyway, to begin with, that Spanish football has probably found itself in ever. And unfortunately, I think this is only the beginning of probably more to come.
Okay. Those are some expensive reports. 7 million.
Yeah. No kidding.
Semra, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks so much. Semra Hunter there from La Liga TV. 7 million. Come on.
I mean, listen, well,
Come on.
the game is gone, as you said earlier, wasn't it?
We're in the wrong game.
Oh, listen. Yeah,
The Irish under-17s, talk to us.
yeah, they're first team to qualify for the European Under-17 Championships in Hungary in May, which is it's terrific. Yeah, I mean, they came through a group with Italy, Ukraine and Cyprus. I don't know if people might have seen this, that actually it looked like they had the hard work done before the final game against Cyprus, who were bottom, but they left it late. They got a 96th minute goal. It was 2-2. Now, I think they would have been, in fact, 99% would have been fine as a best second place team if they hadn't scored in injury time, but this was to win the group and be 100% through without needing to wait for all the other groups to finish. And Nixon Adohun from Bowes, 96th minute, came on the 94th minute, and Naj Razi with a brilliant through ball and a brilliant first touch by Okasun, and he finishes it with his right foot. And it's fantastic. I mean, the Ukraine game, Mason Melia from St Patrick's Athletics scored a hat-trick. He's 15. This is an under-17 team, but quite a few of them were actually a year underage. So this is it is exciting. It's a good news story. It is a good news story. I think I'm finding the negatives and everything tonight. They're coming.
There's a chance one of them could be injured for the tournament.
They're coming. There's loads of them. It is terrific. 16 of the team are with League of Ireland clubs. I suppose when the national underage leagues were brought in, it was obviously contentious. Now, again, a lot of these players, I don't know the story behind each individual one, but I mean, I'm guessing quite a few of them would have been started off with schoolboy clubs, but they certainly going to the League of Ireland underage hasn't hurt them in terms of their development, and hopefully all the schoolboy clubs and League of Ireland clubs can feel a lot of pride at the role that they've all played, and it's shown that at that level, under 17 level, things are good now, and under 19 level things are good as well. But it's such a key age in terms of what we're discussing at the moment here. Evan Ferguson was somehow able to go at 16 to Brighton, and his development between the age of 16 and 18, it meant that his progress continued. A lot of these players are at that age now, 15, 16, where 5-10 years ago these players just all go away en masse at 16. Now clearly some will have options in Europe. I'm guessing there will be interest in some of them, but the majority will be staying at home, which predominantly is a good thing. I think for the development, for their education, there's a lot of positives in terms of their social development and personal development. But what are we doing for them football-wise here? And I think, in reality, a lot of these players will be integrated into first team setups at clubs to train with, adult players, because that's the only way you can really give them full-time training. You have a situation at the moment, I thought this was, I really hadn't really heard this before in Ireland. Sam Curtis at St Patrick's Athletic, he's not in this squad, he's a bit older, he's 17. First player I've heard who's actually left school at junior cert in Ireland to play football in Ireland. Very unusual. He's basically full-time with St Patrick's Athletic. He finished school early. But they are in the midst this year, the FAI, I think, of trying to go to government for a funding plan for academies here, because it was pointed out, I think Will Clark, who's the head of the League of Ireland Academies, pointed out that this is even a bigger achievement because Ireland is one of only 4 countries in Europe that has less than 1 full-time staff member per senior club working in youth football, which is, it's the hands are tied behind the back here, really, to some degree. And actually what people are achieving is incredibly impressive. But again, it's like Ireland are sometimes a third world country when it comes to the spending and facilities and the options that are available. And surely these things, you celebrate them, yes, but then you also say, okay, maybe there's a real benefit in making sure that we're not always talking about what we're doing in spite of ourselves, and think about what could be done actually if you had the building blocks in place to give players at that age a chance. And I think that this success is brilliant, but should also drive that agenda pretty hard.
No, absolutely. And Kevin De Bruyne has scored for Manchester City. Really good goal, curls it into the far corner, right-footed. An annihilation complete, really. And it's funny, Dan, we were just talking on the news round. You look at Irish rugby at the moment on the precipice of a Grand Slam, funded up to its eyeballs. Now, admittedly, at the developmental level, it's private schools, but it's funded very well. Yeah. And then Irish horse racing, funded very, very well by the taxpayer in part, and the results are evident. And there is such wealth in the country that it always beggars belief that the most popular sport along with GA, give or take, depending on how you measure these things, is so underfunded. So it'd be great to see that funding plan given a thumbs up.
It would, yeah. A Man City have now finally outscored Blackpool tonight. Mick McCarthy's Blackpool have scored 6 goals in the Championship. Andy Lyons has scored twice. Now, there's Andy Lyons, a homegrown player, who only, Andy Lyons is about 22, 23, and he played in the League of Ireland for 5 years. It's a great story that he's gone to the Championship, and he's taken off, and that is a great trajectory. But clearly, we could do a lot more to improve the pathways for our players here. Andy Lyons, Bows are now full time, but even moving to Shamrock Rovers in a full time system really pushed him on in the space of a year. So imagine what we could do for a lot of players we have coming through if we had something really established for them at 16, 17, 18, so that they don't lose loads of hours relative to opportunity. And of course, it's not going to be as good as what you can get in some of the elite academies around the world. But I mean, in some cases here, we've almost next to nothing. And really, I think if people get involved with this team in May, that's terrific. But any politicians who are getting on board with it need to be pointed out that, and there are benefits to this. It's not just give us loads of money to spend on wages of senior players. That day is gone. There can be ways of laying down clearly that there's an educational, a football benefit to this, that benefits sort of a support which offers a lot to society.
Particularly if the trend continues of young people leaving education at junior cert, then certain provisions need to be put in place for their well-being going forward as well.
There will have to be, that has to be a part of any deal.
So Mick McCarthy's Blackpool, you love a good mention of Mick McCarthy's Blackpool. 6-1 winners against QPR this evening, so he's doing a bit of a job there. We've got to take a short break. Full time in the Man City game. Haaland with the match ball, 5 goals scored. Football Show is brought to you by Sky. You can watch Real Madrid against Liverpool in the Champions League tomorrow night live on BT Sport.